The summer I turned 19, I learned that some secrets are heavy enough to crush you while others can set you free. Mine did both. It started on a Thursday evening in late June, the kind of humid night where the air clings to your skin like a second layer. I was sprawling on the worn leather couch in our family's living room, pretending to study for my college entrance exams while actually scrolling through my phone. The ceiling fan above me groaned with each rotation, doing little more than pushing hot air from one corner of the room to another. My older brother Athan had just come home from his shift at the bookstore downtown. I heard the familiar sound of his keys hitting the ceramic bowl by the front door, followed by his footsteps padding across the hardwood floor. At 23, Athan had always been the golden child, the one who seemed to have life figured out. He was handsome in that effortless way. Some people are with dark hair that perpetually looks styled even when he just rolled out of bed, and green eyes that could read you like one of those novels he was always recommending. "Hey little brother," he said, collapsing into the armchair across from me. There was something different in his voice that night, a tremor I'd never heard before. I looked up from my phone. "Hey, long shift, you could say that." He ran his hand through his hair, a nervous gesture I recognized. On only did that when something was bothering him. Mom and Dad still at the Hendersons' dinner party. "Yeah, I won't be back until late." I set my phone down, suddenly alert. "What's going on? You look like you've seen a ghost." On leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, and for a long moment he just stared at the coffee table between us. The silence stretched until it became uncomfortable. Then he looked up at me, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Fear, vulnerability, hope, all tangled together. "I need to tell you something," he said quietly, "but I need you to promise me something first." My heart started beating faster. "Okay, promise me you'll hear me out all the way through. And promise me this stays between us, at least for now." The gravity in his voice sent a chill down my spine despite the heat. "On, you're scaring me. What's wrong? Just promise me, Jama, please." I nodded slowly. "I promise. Just keep it between us, whatever it is." On took a deep breath, his hands trembling slightly. "I'm gay." The words hung in the air between us. I felt my eyes widen, my mouth opening slightly in surprise, not because I was shocked. If I was honest with myself, there had always been signs I'd unconsciously noticed and dismissed. What shocked me was the raw courage it must have taken for him to say those words out loud, especially in our family. Our parents weren't overtly homophobic, but they existed in that gray area where they'd say they were fine with LGBTQ plus people as long as it's not in my family. They made uncomfortable jokes, changed the channel when same-sex couples appeared on TV, and our father had once remarked that he was glad both our boys are normal. "Say something," Athan whispered. And I realized I'd been silent for too long. I swallowed hard. "Thank you for telling me. That's it, that's all you have to say." His voice cracked slightly. I stood up and crossed the space between us, sitting on the arm of his chair. "No, I have a lot to say. I'm honored you trusted me with this, and I love you. Nothing changes that." Athan's eyes filled with tears. I'd seen my brother cry exactly twice in my life. Once when our childhood dog died, and once when he broke his arm in 3 places during a soccer game. Now here he was crying in our living room on a Thursday night, and it broke something open in my chest. "Thank you." He breathed. "God, thank you." We sat like that for a while, him wiping his eyes, me trying to process this new reality. Questions swirled in my mind, but I kept my promise to listen. "There's more," Athan said eventually. "There's someone, his name is Makas." And just like that, the story really began. Over the next few weeks, I learned about Makas the way you might learn about a distant country, through stories, descriptions, second-hand emotions. Athan would come home from his shifts at the bookstore, which I now understood included time spent with his secret boyfriend, and he'd lie on my bed while I studied, telling me everything. Makas was 24, a graduate student studying architecture. He was half Filipino with warm brown skin and a laugh that An described as the best sound in the world. They'd met 6 months ago at a coffee shop near campus. Makas had been sketching building designs in a notebook, and An had leaned over to compliment his work. They'd started talking about books, then buildings, then everything else. Within a week they were inseparable. "I wish you could meet him," Athan said one night, staring at my ceiling. "You'd like him. He's kind, Jama, genuinely kind, and he's funny without trying too hard, and when he talks about his designs, his whole face lights up like he's describing magic." I smiled from my desk chair. "You're in love with him completely." Athan turned his head to look at me. "It's terrifying and wonderful at the same time." "Is that normal?" "I think that's exactly what love is supposed to feel like." An sat up, his expression growing serious. "I want you to meet him. Mukas knows about you. I've told him everything. He understands why I can't tell Mom and Dad yet, but he wants to meet my little brother." My stomach tightened with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. "When tomorrow we could meet at that park near the university, the one with the duck pond, just for an hour or two." I hesitated. Meeting Makas would make this real in a way it hadn't been before. Right now he existed in the abstract, a character in Athan's stories. But meeting him meant becoming complicit in the secret, becoming part of the double life my brother was leading. But I'd promised to support Athan, and I meant it. "Okay," I said. Tomorrow, the park was beautiful that Saturday afternoon. Sunlight filtered through oak trees, casting dappled shadows on the walking paths, families scattered across the grass, children squealing as they fed bread to aggressive ducks. I sat on a bench near the pond, my leg bouncing nervously, checking my phone every 30 seconds. "Gemma." I looked up to see Athan approaching with someone beside him. "Muckas." My first thought was that Athan hadn't done him justice in his descriptions. Mucus was striking with thick black hair styled back from his face, deep-set brown eyes, and a gentle smile that immediately put me at ease. He wore a simple white t-shirt and jeans, and his hand was brushed casually against Athens as they walked. When they reached me, Athens' hand dropped away, that automatic response to being in public. The small gesture made my heart ache. Jama, this is Maka's. Maka is my little brother. Makuza extended his hand, his smile widening. It's great to finally meet you. Athen talks about you constantly. His handshake was firm, his voice warm. He does. I glanced at Athen, who was blushing slightly. Always, you're taking those college entrance exams soon, right? How's the studying going? We started walking along the path, falling into easy conversation. Makuza asked thoughtful questions and actually listened to my answers. He told funny stories about his architecture professors and showed me photos of his design projects on his phone. Within 20 minutes, I understood exactly why Athen had fallen for him, but what struck me most was watching them together. The way Makuza's hand would drift toward Athens before he remembered where they were and pulled back. The way Athens' entire demeanor softened when Maka spoke. The inside jokes, the shared glances, the obvious comfort they had with each other. This wasn't a fling or an experiment. This was love, real and deep and undeniable. We found a secluded spot near a cluster of willows away from the main paths. Here, Athen and Makas finally allowed themselves to stand close, their shoulders touching. I pretended to watch the ducks while they stole a quick kiss, wanting to give them a moment of authenticity. Thank you for meeting me, Mucus said when we'd sat down on the grass. I know this is complicated, Athens, lucky to have a brother who supports him. I'm lucky to have him, I replied. Even if he did eat my Halloween candy every year when we were kids, that was strategic candy acquisition. Athen protested, you always pick the best stuff. We laughed and for a while it felt normal, just three guys hanging out on a summer afternoon. But underneath the normally, I felt the weight of the secret we all carried. Every time someone walked past our little spot, Ethan and Marcus would shift apart slightly. Every laugh was a little quieter than it should have been. They were censoring themselves constantly, and watching it exhausted me. How did they do this every day? What are you thinking about? Ethan asked me after Marcus had gone to buy us all cold drinks from a vendor. I looked at my brother, really looked at him. I'm thinking about how unfair this is, that you can't just hold his hand in public, that you have to pretend he doesn't exist when mom asks if you're dating anyone, that you're happy and in love and it has to be a secret. Ethan's expression softened. It's not forever. Someday I'll be able to tell them when I'm financially independent, when I'm ready to handle whatever comes. And what if they don't accept it? Accept him. Then I'll have to accept that, Ethan said quietly. But I'll have Marcus and I'll have you. That'll be enough. Marcus returned with 3 lemonades and we spent another hour in that hidden spot talking about everything and nothing. When it was time to leave, I hugged Marcus goodbye and he whispered, take care of him. You too, I whispered back. Walking home separately from them, Ethan had to maintain the pretense of going to work. I felt the secret settling into my bones. It was mine now too, this beautiful, fragile thing that had to be protected. I just didn't know yet what that protection would cost. August arrived with its relentless heat and the looming specter of my entrance exams. I was spending 14-hour days studying, my brain overflowing with calculus formulas and historical dates. Ethan would quiz me sometimes, and during breaks we'd talk about Marcus. They'd been together 8 months now. Marcus had met some of Ethan's friends from college, the ones who knew and accepted him. They'd gone on a weekend trip to the coast, staying in a small bed and breakfast where they could be themselves without fear. Ethan had come back from that trip glowing, and I'd never seen him happier. But at home, the charade continued. Mom would ask Ethan if he'd started dating anyone, and he'd deflect with vague comments about being too busy with work. Dad would make those uncomfortable jokes about when Ethan finds a nice girl, and I'd watch my brother's jaw tighten imperceptibly. I started to resent them for it, our parents, not with anger exactly, but with a growing disappointment. How could they not see how their comments affected Ethan? How could they be so willfully blind? Don't, Ethan said one night when I expressed this frustration. Don't resent them, they don't know any better, that's not an excuse. No, but it's a reason, he sighed, closing the textbook he'd been reading. People are products of how they were raised, James. Mom and Dad grew up in a different time. It doesn't make it right, but it makes it understandable. You're more forgiving than I am, I've had more time to process it. He smiled sadly. You just found out about all this. You're allowed to be angry on my behalf, but don't let it consume you. Save your energy for the positive stuff. Wise words from my big brother as always. The dinner happened on a Thursday night in mid-August. Mom had been planning it for weeks, a celebration for my 18th birthday. Even though my actual birthday had been in July, she'd invited extended family. Aunt Linda and Uncle Robert, their 2 kids, and our grandmother on Dad's side. Ethan had asked if he could bring a friend from work, and Mom had readily agreed. Of course, honey, the more the merrier. What Ethan hadn't mentioned was that this friend from work was Marcus. I didn't learn about this plan until the day of the dinner. Ethan cornered me in the hallway that afternoon, his face pale but determined. What are you doing? I hissed. This is crazy, I know, but Marcus and I have been together for 8 months, Jamie. 8 months. And I'm tired of hiding him. I'm tired of pretending the most important person in my life doesn't exist. So you're going to tell them tonight at my birthday dinner with the whole family there? No, God no, I'm just going to introduce him as my friend. Let them meet him, let them see how wonderful he is. Ethan grabbed my shoulders. I'm not ready to tell them everything, but I want them to know him. Is that so wrong? I wanted to say yes. I wanted to tell him this was a terrible idea, that it would only make things harder. But looking into my brother's eyes, seeing the desperation there, I couldn't. Okay, I said, but if this goes sideways, I'm telling Mom you ate my Halloween candy. Ethan laughed, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. Deal. Marcus arrived at 6:30 dressed in dark slacks and a button-down shirt, carrying a bottle of wine and a wrapped present for me. He looked nervous and I didn't blame him. This was like meeting the family, except without any of the acknowledgement or respect that usually comes with that milestone. You must be Marcus, Mom said warmly, taking the wine. Ethan's told us so much about you. That was a lie. Ethan had barely mentioned Marcus by name, always keeping his stories vague. It's wonderful to meet you, Mrs. Atrix. Thank you for having me. Marcus's voice was steady, his smile genuine. He was good at this, at wearing the mask. Dad shook his hand with that aggressive firmness some men use, sizing Marcus up. So you work with Ethan at the bookstore? We met there. Yes, sir, though I'm actually in graduate school. Architecture, that's impressive. Dad seemed pleased by this. Good career, stable, smart choice. I watched Ethan watching Marcus navigate these waters, saw the pride and fear mixing in his expression. This was the man he loved, being inspected and evaluated, and having no idea he was anything more than a casual friend. Dinner was a chaos of overlapping conversations. Aunt Linda dominated most of the discussion with stories about her recent cruise. Grandmother critiqued the pot roast, not enough salt, too much rosemary. My younger cousins argued over whose turn it was to choose the next family movie night. Through it all, Marcus played his role perfectly. He was friendly but not overly familiar. He conversed with everyone, asking thoughtful questions and sharing appropriate anecdotes. He complimented Mom's cooking and laughed at Dad's terrible jokes. And Ethan sat beside him, maintaining the exact right amount of distance, the exact right tone of casual friendship. It was exhausting to watch. So Marcus, Aunt Linda said during dessert, do you have a girlfriend? Handsome young man like you must have the ladies lining up. The table went quiet. I saw Marcus's hand tighten around his fork, saw the flash of something painful cross his face before he smoothed it away. I'm actually focusing on my studies right now, he said easily. Graduate school doesn't leave much time for dadding. That's what Ethan always says, Mom laughed. You two are both married to your work. Maybe we should set you both up with some nice girls, get you out of your shells. Mom, Ethan said, his voice tight. What? I'm just saying, you're both at such a good age. You should be having fun meeting people. I saw Marcus' jaw clench almost imperceptibly, saw Ethan's hand move toward Marcus under the table before stopping himself, saw the moment when Marcus stood up excusing himself to the bathroom, his exit just a little too quick. I'll go check on him, Ethan said immediately, standing. Why, I'm sure he's fine, Dad said. He seemed upset. I'll just be a minute. Ethan disappeared down the hallway and I was left at the table with my family. All of them oblivious to what had just happened. They'd wounded someone without even realizing it, dismissed and invalidated a relationship they didn't know existed. I wanted to scream at them, wanted to flip the table and tell them everything, but I'd made a promise. That Marcus seems like a nice boy. Grandmother said, very polite. You should make friends with him, James. Good to have nice, respectful friends. I have, I said quietly. He is nice, really nice. Ethan and Marcus returned a few minutes later. Marcus' eyes were slightly red, but his smile was back in place. Ethan looked miserable but was holding himself together. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur. When it was finally over, I walked Marcus and Ethan to the door. I'm sorry, I said to Marcus. I'm so sorry. Don't be, it's not your fault, he looked at Ethan. I'll call you tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow. They wanted to kiss goodbye. I could see it in every line of their bodies, the magnetic pull between them, but we were in the doorway. My family was just in the next room. So instead they shared a quick hug that lasted a second too long. And then Marcus was gone. Ethan closed the door and leaned against it, his eyes closed. I hate this, he whispered. I know, I hate lying, I hate pretending. I hate that he had to sit there and be asked about girlfriends while I couldn't even hold his hand under the table. I know. When does it get easier, Jamie? When do I get to just live my life? I didn't have an answer, so I just wrapped my arms around my brother and let him lean on me. This person who'd always been my protector, my guide. Now. He was the one who needed support and I was determined to give it. We'll figure it out. I promise somehow we'll figure it out. I just wished I believed it. September came with falling leaves and new beginnings. I'd aced my entrance exams and gotten accepted to the state university, the same one where Marcus was doing his graduate work. Ethan was thrilled. It meant I'd be close by, meant the three of us could spend more time together once I started classes. But something had shifted after that dinner. Ethan was pulling away from our parents, spending more and more time out of the house. His excuses became thinner, his patience shorter. He'd snap at Dad's jokes now instead of letting them slide. When Mom would ask about his day, he'd give one-word answers and retreat to his room. You need to be more careful, I warned him one night. They're going to notice something's wrong. Let them notice, Ethan said bitterly. Maybe then we'll have the conversation I've been avoiding for a year. You're not ready for that conversation. How do you know what I'm ready for? His anger startled me. Ethan never got angry, not like this. Hey, I'm on your side, remember, he deflated immediately. I know, I'm sorry, I'm tired, Jamie. I'm so tired of living two different lives. Marcus wants us to get an apartment together after he graduates in December, and I want that. God, I want that so much. But how do I tell Mom and Dad I'm moving in with my male friend without raising 1,000 questions? You tell them you need independence, that you're 23 and it's time to have your own place. And when they ask why I'm not living alone, why I need a roommate when I could afford a studio. Because roommates are more fun because the place you found is too expensive for one person. Ethan, people live with friends all the time, but it's not that simple and you know it. He ran his hands through his hair in frustration. The lying never ends. It just gets more complicated. I didn't have a solution for him because he was right. The lying did get more complicated. Every omission led to another, every half-truth branching into more deceptions. It was a house of cards and I was terrified of what would happen when it finally collapsed. The fracture came on a Sunday afternoon in late September. Ethan and I were in his room listening to music and talking about nothing important when we heard the front door open. Mom and Dad were supposed to be at church and then brunch with friends. They shouldn't have been home for hours, boys. Mom's voice called up the stairs. You home? Yeah, Mom. Ethan called back. What's wrong? Can you come down here, please, both of you? Something in her tone made my stomach drop. Ethan and I exchanged glances and I saw my own fear reflected in his eyes. We went downstairs to find both our parents in the living room, still in their church clothes. Dad was standing by the window, his arms crossed. Mom was sitting on the couch, her purse still on her shoulder, her face pale. What's going on? Ethan asked carefully. We ran into the Martins at church, Mom said. Her voice was strange, controlled. You remember them? They have a son in Marcus' graduate program. The blood drained from my face. Beside me, I felt Ethan go rigid. They mentioned seeing you and Marcus together quite a bit. Said, you two seemed very close. Mom looked up at Ethan and I saw tears in her eyes. They said you were at some restaurant last week and you were. They said you looked like more than friends. The silence that followed was deafening. Mom, Ethan started. Are you gay? Dad's voice cut through like a knife. He still hadn't turned from the window. Is that what this is, you and this Marcus? I felt like I was watching a car crash in slow motion. This was the moment we'd all been dreading, except it was happening in the worst possible way. Not on Ethan's terms, but forced out by accident and observation. Dad, if you just let me explain. Explain what? Dad whirled around and I saw the anger in his face. Explain why you've been lying to us. Explain why you brought that man into our home and didn't tell us he was he couldn't even say the word. Boyfriend, Ethan said, his voice shaking but clear. Marcus is my boyfriend. We've been together for 9 months. Mom made a small sound, something between a gasp and a sob. How could you? She whispered. How could you lie to us like this? How could I tell you the truth? Ethan shot back. You heard, Dad, he can't even say the word. How was I supposed to come to you with this when I knew exactly how you'd react? We're your parents, Dad said. We had a right to know. You had a right to who I'm dating, to control my personal life, to know who our son is. I'm the same person I've always been. Ethan's voice was rising now. Years of frustration pouring out. I'm still your son. I still love books and terrible movies and morning coffee. I still help Mom with the garden and debate politics with Dad. Nothing about me has changed except now you know who I love. Everything has changed, Mom said softly. And something about the defeated tone in her voice was worse than any anger. Everything. I stood frozen, unable to speak, unable to help. This was Ethan's moment. His truth to share, and all I could do was bear witness. I think you should leave, Dad said finally. Go stay with Marcus or one of your friends. We need time to process this. Dad, I said, leave Ethan. The finality in his voice left no room for argument. Ethan looked at Mom, but she wouldn't meet his eyes, staring instead at her hands folded in her lap. Fine, Ethan said. Fine, I'll go. He turned and headed upstairs and I followed him, my legs moving automatically. Ethan, I said when we reached his room. Ethan, I'm so sorry. He was throwing clothes into a duffel bag, his movements jerky and aggressive. Not your fault. What can I do? Nothing. There's nothing anyone can do. He zipped the bag and grabbed his phone charger. Will you be okay here? Don't worry about me. Where will you go? Marcus's place. He's been asking me to move in anyway. Guess the universe made the decision for me. He tried to smile, but it came out broken. Take care of yourself, little brother. And don't let them poison you against who I am. Promise me, I promise. Call me later. Of course, I followed him back downstairs. Mom was crying openly now and Dad had returned to staring out the window. Neither of them looked at Ethan as he headed for the door. He paused with his hand on the doorknob and turned back. I love you both, he said, and I'm sorry this isn't what you wanted, but I'm not sorry for who I am or who I love. I hope someday you can accept that. They didn't respond. Ethan looked at me one last time and I saw the heartbreak in his eyes. Then he walked out the door and I heard his car start, heard him drive away. The house felt immediately emptier. How long have you known? Dad asked me, still not turning around. I swallowed hard. A while, and you didn't think we should know? Your own parents. He made me promise, and it wasn't my secret to tell. Finally, Dad looked at me. He's corrupted you too, turned you into a liar. He didn't corrupt anyone, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. He's still Ethan. He's still a good person, still your son. Go to your room, Jamie. Dad, I said, go to your room. I went not because I was obedient, but because I couldn't stand to be in that room anymore. Couldn't stand the suffocating disappointment and rejection radiating from my parents. In my room, I called Ethan. He answered on the second ring. You okay? I asked. No, but I will be. I heard voices in the background. Marcus' voice, gentle and concerned. Marcus says, I can stay as long as I need, forever if it comes to that. I'm glad you have him. Me too. A pause. Jamie, thank you for keeping my secret, for supporting me. It means everything. I love you, Ethan. Love you too, little brother. After we hung up, I lay on my bed and stared at the ceiling, trying to process what had just happened. My family had fractured in the space of an hour, split along a fault line that had been there all along, just waiting for the right pressure to crack it open. And I was caught in the middle, loving both sides, understanding both sides, but knowing deep in my bones that Ethan was right and our parents were wrong. The house became a tomb of unspoken words. 3 days passed without my parents mentioning Ethan. His name simply vanished from our dinner table conversations, from casual morning exchanges. It was as if he'd never existed, as if we'd always been a family of 3 instead of 4. On the 4th day I broke. "Has anyone called Ethan?" I asked during dinner, my fork poised over untouched pasta. The silence stretched like taffy. "We're not discussing this right now," Mom said finally, her voice flat. "When are we going to discuss it? When are you going to talk to your son?" Dad set down his water glass with a sharp click. "The son who lied to us for months, who brought that man into our home under false pretenses. The son who was terrified to tell you the truth because he knew exactly how you'd react." My voice was rising. "And he was right, wasn't he? You kicked him out. You won't even say his name. Jamie, that's enough." Mom said, "No, it's not enough. Nothing is enough. If you're acting like he committed some crime, he fell in love, that's it. That's his big sin." "This is not your concern," Dad said. "He's my brother. How is it not my concern?" Dad stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "When you're living under my roof, eating my food, you'll respect my decisions. I won't have you defending this lifestyle. It's not a lifestyle, it's who he is." Enough. The shout echoed through the dining room. "I don't want to hear another word about this. Not tonight, not until I'm ready to discuss it." "And when will that be?" I asked quietly. "How long are you going to pretend you don't have a son?" Dad left the room without answering. I called Ethan every day, sometimes multiple times. He'd tell me about his new life at Makah's apartment, a cozy 2-bedroom in a neighborhood near campus. Makah's roommate had moved out the month before, so the timing had worked out, even if the circumstances were terrible. "It's nice here," Ethan told me during one call. "Weird, but nice. I can just exist. Makah's and I can eat breakfast together without hiding. We can watch TV on the couch, normal couple stuff." "I'm glad you have that," I said, "but I miss you." "I miss you too. How are things at home?" "Terrible. They won't talk about you. It's like you died." Ethan was quiet for a moment. "Maybe I did, maybe the son. They thought they had died and they need to grieve him before they can meet the real me." "That's very philosophical. I'm reading a lot of self-help books." Makah's bought me a whole stack. Stuff about coming out, dealing with family rejection, all that fun stuff. He laughed, but it sounded tired. "Never thought I'd be the target audience for these. Can I come visit you? I need to see that you're really okay." "Of course. Come this Saturday, I'll make you lunch." Makah's and Ethan's apartment was on the 3rd floor of an old brick building with creaky stairs and a faint smell of someone's cooking always drifting through the halls. When Ethan opened the door, I almost didn't recognize him. It had been less than a week, but he looked different, lighter somehow, despite the dark circles under his eyes. He was wearing an old college t-shirt and sweatpants, his hair messy, his feet bare. He looked like someone who just woken up from a long nightmare and was slowly remembering how to be human. "Hey little brother," he said, pulling me into a tight hug. The apartment was small but warm. Makah's had obvious design skills. Everything was thoughtfully placed. The furniture mismatched but somehow cohesive. Books lined makeshift shelves, plants clustered on the windowsills, photographs covered the walls. It felt lived in a way our family home never did, filled with personality and history. "Makah's is at his studio," Ethan explained, leading me to the kitchen. "Big project due next week, but he wanted me to tell you you're welcome anytime." Over grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup. We talked about everything except the one thing looming over both of us. Ethan told me about the neighborhood, the little coffee shop down the street, the bookstore he discovered that specialized in architecture, texts, and philosophy. I told him about school. "My class is starting soon." The relief of finally being done with entrance exams, but eventually we ran out of safe topics. "Have they said anything?" Ethan asked. "Mom and Dad." I shook my head. "Nothing. It's like you never existed." That's worse somehow than anger or disappointment. The silence is worse. "They'll come around, they have to, do they?" Ethan pushed his soup around his bowl. "You read about these situations, about families who never reconcile, parents who die without speaking to their kids again. It happens, James. It's not some abstract possibility." The thought made my chest tight. "Don't say that, I'm just being realistic. I've had to accept that I might have lost them, that this might be permanent." He looked up at me. "But I want you to know that I don't regret it. Being honest, being with Moose, living authentically, even if it costs me everything else, I don't regret it. You shouldn't have to choose." "No, I shouldn't, but sometimes life doesn't give us the options we want." Makah's came home an hour later, his messenger bag slung over his shoulder, exhaustion evident in every line of his body. But when he saw Ethan, his whole face transformed. That's when I truly understood what my brother had been trying to describe. That light, that joy, that sense of coming home. Jamie. Makah set down his bag and came over to shake my hand. "Good to see you again, under better circumstances this time, I hope." "Definitely better," I agreed. We spent the afternoon together, the 3 of us. Makah showed me his latest architectural designs, a community center he was proposing for his thesis project. Ethan made coffee and told embarrassing stories about me as a kid. For a few hours it felt almost normal, like we were just 3 friends hanging out. But when it was time for me to leave, reality crashed back in. "You'll come back soon?" Ethan asked at the door. "As often as I can. And if they ask where you're going, I'll tell them I'm visiting a friend," which is true. I hugged him tight. "I love you, Ethan, don't forget that." "Never." The drive home felt like traveling between 2 different worlds. In one, my brother was happy and free and in love. In the other, he was erased. A ghost we all pretended didn't exist. I didn't know which world I belonged to anymore. October brought cooler weather and the start of my college classes. I drive to campus 3 days a week, and on those days I'd often stop by Ethan and Makah's apartment. Sometimes I'd study there, other times we just talk. Slowly I was building my own relationship with Makas, separate from his role as my brother's boyfriend. Makas was easy to be around. He had this way of making you feel heard, of asking questions that showed he genuinely cared about the answers. He'd help me with my calculus homework. Apparently architecture required a lot of math, and in return I'd proofread his thesis drafts. "You're good at this," Maka said one afternoon, reading through my edits. "You catch things I miss." Years of editing Ethan's college papers. I admitted he's brilliant but can't spell to save his life. "I've noticed," Maka's laughed. His grocery lists are works of abstract art. We were sitting at their small kitchen table, papers spread everywhere. When Ethan came home from his bookstore shift, he stopped in the doorway looking at the two of us and smiled. "My two favorite people bonding over my spelling deficiency." "Great, we're bonding over your many deficiencies," Marcus corrected, standing to kiss him hello. I looked away automatically, that ingrained response to give them privacy, but Marcus noticed. "James, you don't have to do that. Look away, I mean you're safe here, we're safe here." It was such a small thing, but it meant everything. They were right in this apartment, they didn't have to hide, and neither did I from the reality of their relationship. At home the silence continued. 3 weeks had passed since Ethan left, and our parents still refused to discuss him. I'd become a messenger carrying news between the two worlds, never quite belonging fully to either. One night Mom knocked on my bedroom door. It was late past 11 and I was surprised to see her still awake. "Can I come in?" she asked. "Sure." She sat on the edge of my bed, her hands folded in her lap. In the dim light from my desk lamp she looked older than I remembered, tired in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. "How is he?" she asked quietly. "Ethan, how is he really?" The question caught me off guard. He's okay. Settling into the apartment, work's going well. "That boy Marcus, he's good to Ethan." "Mom, really good, he makes him happy." She was quiet for a long moment. "I don't understand it, any of it. When did this happen? Was it something we did?" "Mom, it's not something that happened, it's just who Ethan is, who he's always been." "But he dated girls in high school, that Patterson girl, what was her name?" "Sarah, and I don't think they ever actually dated. They went to prom together, that's different." Mom wiped at her eyes. "I thought I knew my son. I thought I knew everything about him, and then I find out he's been lying to me for months, that he's living this whole secret life." "He wasn't lying to hurt you," I interrupted. "He was protecting himself." "There's a difference." "Protecting himself from what?" "From his own parents." "Yes," I said simply, "from exactly the reaction you had." She flinched as if I'd struck her. "That's not fair, isn't it? You kicked him out, Mom. You won't say his name. You act like he's dead." "I needed time. I still need time to process this." "How much time?" "Because Ethan's life is happening right now. He's not going to press pause on being himself while you process it." Mom stood up abruptly. "I didn't come here to be lectured by my 18-year-old son." "Then why did you come here?" She paused at the door, her back to me. "I came here because I miss him. Because I lie awake at night wondering if I made the right choice. Because I'm his mother and every instinct I have is screaming at me to call him, to make sure he's eating properly, to check that he's happy." "So call him," I said softly. "Mom, just call him. That's all he wants to know, you still love him." "I do love him. That's what makes this so hard." She left before I could respond, and I sat there in the dark trying to understand how someone could love their child and reject them at the same time. How those two things could exist in the same space, in the same heart. The next day I met Ethan for coffee near campus. I told him about Mom's visit, about her question, her confession. "She misses you," I said. "She's just too stubborn to admit it fully." Ethan stirred his coffee absently. "Dad put his foot down, didn't he? That's why she won't call. She wants to, but he won't let her." "How do you know?" "Because I know them. Dad makes the rules. Mom follows them. She always has," he sighed. "I used to think that was romantic, how devoted they were to each other. Now I just see how unbalanced it is. Maybe she'll stand up to him eventually. Maybe, but I can't wait around for maybe. James, I have to live my life." He was right, of course, but it didn't make the situation any less painful. "Marcus wants to meet his parents next month," Ethan said, changing the subject. "For Thanksgiving. He's been talking about me for a while, apparently, and they want to meet the boyfriend." "That's great, isn't it? It's terrifying. What if they hate me? What if I'm not what they expected?" "Marcus loves you, that's all that matters to them." "You sound very wise for someone who's never been in a relationship," Ethan teased. I felt my face heat up. "I've been busy with school." Nothing to do with that guy from your English class." "What was his name?" "Derek." "David. And there's nothing there, you sure? Because you light up whenever you mention him." "Did I?" I hadn't realized. David was interesting, smart, funny, with dark curly hair and an infectious laugh. We'd been paired for a project, spent hours in the library together. I'd caught myself thinking about him at odd moments, wondering what he was doing, if he'd like the book I'd recommended. "I don't know," I admitted. "Maybe. Is that weird that you might like a guy?" Ethan's expression softened. "Not even a little bit weird, James. It's human. But what if I'm not? I mean, I've never thought about this before." About whether I might be gay. By questioning, Ethan reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Labels are helpful, but they're not required. You're allowed to just explore what you feel without having to define it immediately." "I don't know what I feels." "Then figure it out and know that whatever you discover, I'm here. You supported me through all of this. Let me support you too." It was such a simple offer, but it cracked something open inside me. I'd been so focused on being the strong one, the bridge between Ethan and our parents, that I hadn't let myself examine my own confusing feelings. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "When did you know about yourself?" Ethan leaned back, thinking. "There wasn't one moment. It was more like pieces falling into place. Over years, I'd noticed guys in ways that felt different from how my friends noticed them. I'd feel something when I saw two men together that I couldn't quite name. And every time I tried to date girls, it felt like I was acting in a play, saying lines that didn't quite fit." He smiled. Then I met Marcus and everything made sense. Not just about being gay, but about what love actually feels like. And you weren't scared, terrified every single day. But living a lie was scarier. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching students rush past the coffee shop windows, everyone absorbed in their own dramas and discoveries. You should ask him out, Ethan said suddenly. David, what's the worst that could happen? He could say no, could be straight, could think I'm insane, or he could say yes, could be interested, could think you're brave. I thought about David, about the way he'd smiled at me last week when I'd made a stupid joke about Shakespeare. The way our hands had brushed when we'd both reached for the same book. The way he'd said, see you tomorrow, like it was a promise. Maybe, I said, maybe I will. I didn't ask David out immediately. Instead, I spent 2 weeks carefully observing him, looking for signs, trying to determine if my interest was reciprocated or if I was just projecting hope onto friendly gestures. He sat next to me in English class every session, even though there were plenty of open seats. He laughed at my jokes, even the terrible ones. He started texting me random thoughts about our readings, nothing important, just connections he'd made or quotes he'd liked. You're overthinking this, Marcus said. When I described the situation during one of my visits, Ethan had gone to pick up dinner, leaving Marcus and me alone in the apartment. What if I'm misreading everything? Then you'll know, Jamie, you can't live in the what if. Trust me, I spent years doing that. It's exhausting and it gets you nowhere. But you had Ethan. What if David isn't even into guys? There's only one way to find out. Marcus set down his pencil. He'd been sketching while we talked. Look, rejection sucks. It really does, but regret is worse. At least with rejection, with regret, you just spend forever wondering what might have been. He was right. Of course he was right. The next Tuesday after English class, I asked David if he wanted to grab coffee. Just the two of us, not for studying, just coffee. Like a date, he asked, and my heart stopped. Yeah, like a date if you want. If not, we can just, I'd like that. He interrupted, his smile spreading. I was wondering when you'd ask. You were Jamie. I've been dropping hints for weeks. I was starting to think you weren't interested. We went to a small cafe off campus, one I'd never been to before. It felt important somehow to make this separate from everything else, to give it its own space. David ordered an elaborate latte with 3 different syrups. I got plain coffee and immediately felt boring. Don't worry, David said, reading my expression. Someone has to be the normal one in this relationship. The word sent a thrill through me. We talked for 2 hours, the coffee long forgotten. David told me about growing up in Seattle, about coming out to his parents when he was 16, about his passion for literature and his dream of becoming a teacher. I told him about Ethan, about the situation with my parents, about my own confusion and recent realizations. So I'm your first exploration, David asked, not judging, just clarifying. Is that weird? Not weird, just something to be aware of. I don't want to be an experiment, Jamie. I like you, actually like you. If we're doing this, I need to know you're serious about figuring yourself out. I am serious, and you're not an experiment. I search for the right words. You're someone who makes me smile without trying, someone I think about at random times, someone I want to know better. David reached across the table and took my hand. His palm was warm, his fingers longer than mine. It felt natural, right? Like something I'd been waiting for without knowing it. Okay, then he said, let's see where this goes. Dating David was like learning a new language. Everything felt significant, weighted with meaning. A text message could make my entire day. The brush of his shoulder against mine in class sent electricity through my body. Our second date, when he kissed me goodnight outside my car, I felt like I was discovering what it meant to be fully alive. Ethan was thrilled when I told him. My little brother all grown up and dadding, he said, pretending to wipe away tears. I'm so proud. Shut up, I laughed, throwing a pillow at him. No, seriously, I'm happy for you. David sounds great. He is. He's patient with me figuring all this out. Doesn't push, doesn't make assumptions. That's how it should be. Ethan's expression grew more serious. Have you thought about telling mom and dad? The question deflated my joy like a pin to a balloon. No. God, no, I can barely handle them not talking to you. I can't imagine adding this to it. You shouldn't have to hide, Jamie, says the guy who hid for years, which is exactly why I'm saying it. I know what that hiding costs. I don't want it for you, but I wasn't ready. Not yet, maybe not ever. I'd seen what honesty had cost Ethan, and I wasn't brave enough to pay that price. November arrived with early snow and Thanksgiving plans. Ethan and Marcus were going to visit Marcus's parents in the city, a 5-hour drive north. I was expected to stay home with our parents to maintain the pretense of a normal family holiday. Come with us, Ethan said when I stopped by their apartment the week before. Marcus' parents wouldn't mind, they've got plenty of room. And abandon mom and dad on Thanksgiving. That'll definitely help the situation. You're not responsible for fixing this, Jamie. Someone has to try. The Tuesday before Thanksgiving, something shifted. I came home from class to find mom sitting at the kitchen table, a photo album open in front of her. She was crying quietly, her fingers tracing a picture of Ethan as a little boy, gap-toothed and grinning. Mom. She looked up quickly, wiping her eyes. Sorry, I found these in the attic. I sat down beside her. The album was from the year Ethan was 7 and I was 3. Photos of us at the beach building sand castles, Ethan teaching me to ride a bike, our family Christmas card, all of us matching in red sweaters, looking like the perfect happy family. He was such a sweet child, Mom said softly, always looking out for you. Remember when you fell off the jungle gym in 3rd grade? Ethan carried you all the way home on his back. I remember I was terrified I'd broken my arm. It was just bruised, but he stayed up with me all night anyway in case I needed anything. He was always like that. Protective, caring. She turned the page, revealing more photos. Your father thinks I'm weak for missing him, for wanting to call. You're not weak, Mom, you're human. He says if we give in, if we accept this, we're condoning sin, that we're failing as parents. And what do you think? She was quiet for a long time. I think my son is gone and there's a hole in my life where he used to be. I think every morning I wake up and forget just for a second and then I remember and it hurts all over again. I think I don't care anymore about sin or condoning or any of it. I just want my boy back. Then call him Mom. Please just call him your father. Forget Dad for 1 second. What do you want? She looked at me, tears streaming down her face. I want to know if he's eating vegetables, if he's getting enough sleep, if he's happy, if that boy Marcus, if he's treating my son well. He's eating vegetables because Marcus cooks healthy meals. He's sleeping better than he has in years. He's happier than I've ever seen him. And Marcus treats him like he's the most precious thing in the world. Mom's breath caught. Really, really, Mom, they're good together. Marcus is kind and patient and he loves Ethan so much. It's actually kind of nauseating sometimes. She laughed through her tears. Don't let your father hear you say that. Mom, you can't live your life according to what Dad thinks. Don't you want to make your own choices about your own son? She closed the photo album slowly. I need to think. Can you give me time to think? Of course. She stood up, gathering the album. At the doorway she paused. Jamie, thank you for being a bridge. I know that can't be easy. I love you both, that's all. After she left, I texted Ethan. I think Mom might be coming around. His response was immediate. Really, really, give her time. I've got nothing but time, little brother. Thanksgiving morning I woke to find Dad in the kitchen attempting to cook. This was unusual. Dad didn't cook. Mom handled all the meals with Dad's contribution limited to grilling in summer. Where's Mom? I asked. She ran to the store, forgot cranberries. He was wrestling with a turkey trying to figure out the roasting pan. How does this thing work? You put the turkey in the pan, Dad. That seems too simple. I helped him prep the turkey, seasoning it the way Mom always did. We worked in silence. The elephant in the room, Ethan's empty chair at the dinner table, somehow growing larger with each passing minute. Your mother wants to call him, Dad said suddenly. Invite him to dinner. I froze my hand halfway to the spice cabinet. What did you say? I said no. I told her it was too soon, that we needed to maintain boundaries. Boundaries, Dad. He's your son, not a stranger. A son who lied to us, who brought shame on this family. Shame? I set down the paprika harder than necessary. There's no shame in being gay, Dad. The only shame here is how you've treated him. Watch your tone. No, I was surprised by my own boldness, by the anger suddenly coursing through me. No, I'm done watching my tone. I'm done pretending this is okay. You kicked Ethan out for being honest, for finally trusting you enough to share who he really is. And instead of loving him through it, you rejected him. This isn't about love. It's exactly about love. Love isn't conditional, Dad. It's not I'll love you if you're straight or I'll love you if you fit my expectations. It's just love, period. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. My heart was pounding, but I couldn't stop. Now I understand that you care more about what the neighbors think than about your own son's happiness. I understand that you'd rather have a hollow relationship based on lies than a real one based on truth. Jamie, I'm not finished. Ethan is the same person he was before you knew. He's still smart and kind and funny. He still cares about this family even though this family rejected him. The only thing that's changed is now you know who he loves. And if you can't accept that, if you can't love him anyway, then that's your failure, not his. Dad stared at me, his face red. Are you finished? Yes. Good, because you can spend Thanksgiving however you want, but you will not disrespect me in my own home. He walked out, leaving me alone with a half-prepared turkey. I stood there shaking, adrenaline flooding my system. I'd never spoken to my father like that, never challenged him so directly. Part of me wanted to apologize, to smooth things over, but a larger part was tired of smoothing things over. I pulled out my phone and called Ethan. Hey, happy Thanksgiving, he answered, his voice cheerful. I could hear Marcus in the background laughing about something. What would Marcus's parents say if I showed up for dinner? What? I just had a fight with Dad, a big one, and I don't want to be here anymore, Ethan. I want to be with people who actually care about being a family. Are you serious? Completely. I heard muffled conversation. Then Marcus' voice came on the line. Jamie, my mom says we'd love to have you. There's always room for one more. Thank you. I'll be there in a few hours. Drive safe. We'll save you some pie. I packed a quick bag, left a note for my parents saying I'd gone to friends for the holiday, and got in my car. As I drove away from my childhood home, watching it disappear in my rear-view mirror, I felt simultaneously guilty and liberated. Maybe this was what growing up meant, choosing your own family, even when it meant disappointing the one you were born into. Marcus' parents lived in a suburb north of the city in a house that reminded me of those cozy homes in holiday movies. Warm light spilling from windows, a wreath on the door, the faint smell of cooking wafting into the crisp November air. Ethan met me at the door, pulling me into a tight hug. You really came. I really did. What happened with Dad? I'll tell you later. Right now I just want to meet Makah's parents and forget about everything else. Marcus appeared behind Ethan, grinning. Welcome to the chaos, James. Fair warning. My mom's going to feed you until you can't move, and my dad's going to ask you 1,000 questions. They're excited to meet Ethan's brother. The house was indeed chaotic in the best possible way. Maka's mom, Elena, was a force of nature, petite and energetic, with graying hair pulled back in a bun and an apron covered in flour. She hugged me like I was a long-lost relative, speaking rapid fire about how wonderful it was to finally meet me, how Maka's and Ethan had told her so much, how I must be starving from the drive. Maka's dad, Robert, was quieter but equally warm. He shook my hand firmly and said, "Any brother of Ethan's is family here." Family, the word settled over me like a blanket. The house was full of people. Maka's younger sister Sophia home from her sophomore year at college. His aunt and uncle, a couple of family friends and what appeared to be several random neighbors who'd been invited. Because as Elena explained, the more the merrier. But what struck me most was how naturally Ethan and Maka's existed in this space. Maka's hand rested casually on Ethan's shoulder. They shared a chair at the crowded dining table, Ethan's arm around Maka's waist. They referred to each other as my boyfriend without hesitation, without fear. And no one batted an eye. It was just accepted normal the way it should be. During dinner, Alina told embarrassing stories about Maka's. Robert asked me about my college plans and actually listened to my answers. Sophia grilled Ethan about his favorite books, then argued passionately about whether Pride and Prejudice was better than Wuthering Heights. It felt like a real family dinner, messy and loud and full of laughter. Nothing like the tense, controlled meals at my parents' house where conversation was carefully monitored and certain topics were forbidden. Your mom called, Ethan whispered to me during dessert 4 times, I'll call her back later. Jamie, I'm not ready yet, let me have this just for tonight. He squeezed my shoulder, okay, just for tonight. After dinner, Maka's extended family left, but I stayed. Alina insisted I take Maka's sister's room. Sophia was sleeping on the couch, she said, and wouldn't hear any arguments. Late that night I found Ethan and Maka's on the back porch, bundled in blankets and talking quietly. The temperature had dropped, their breath visible in the cold air. Mind if I join? I asked. Never, Ethan said, making room on the bench. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, looking up at the stars. The city lights were dim out here, letting the constellations shine through. Your parents are amazing, I said to Maka's. Thank you for letting me crash your Thanksgiving. They're your family too now, Maka said simply. That's how it works in the Santos household. You're connected to someone we love. You're in. I wish my parents were like that. Give them time, Maka said. Some people just need longer to adjust. And what if they never adjust? What if this is just who they are? Ethan pulled the blanket tighter around himself. Then we build our own family like this, like what we have here. Is that enough? I asked. Does it stop hurting knowing they rejected you? No, Ethan admitted. It still hurts every day, but it hurts less than living a lie. And I have Maka's and you and now Maka's family. That doesn't erase the pain, but it makes it bearable. Maka's rested his head on Ethan's shoulder. My parents didn't always get it either. When I came out at 16, they struggled. My dad especially, he had all these expectations, these dreams of who I'd be, and I wasn't that person. What changed? I asked. Time, education, but mostly they had to decide what was more important, their expectations or their son. They chose me. It took them a while, but they chose me. I told Mom she had to make her own choices. I said that she couldn't just follow Dad's rules. How'd that go? She's thinking about it, at least that's what she said. My phone buzzed in my pocket, another call from Mom. I silenced it. You should call her back, Ethan said gently. She's probably worried. She should have thought about that before, Jamie. No, Ethan. I know you're the forgiving one, the patient one, but I'm angry. I'm angry at them for hurting you, for making you feel like you had to hide, for valuing their comfort over your happiness. That anger is valid, Maka said, but don't let it poison you. Trust me, I spent 2 years being angry at my dad. It didn't change anything except make me miserable. I knew they were right, but tonight I wanted to hold on to my anger. It felt righteous, protective. It felt like the only weapon I had against the injustice of it all. I finally called Mom, home the next morning after a breakfast where Alina pied me with French toast and fresh fruit. Mom's voice was thick with relief. Where are you? Are you safe? I'm fine, Mom. I'm at Maka's parents' house. Maka's as in, yes, Ethan's boyfriend. I drove up yesterday. I'm spending the weekend here. Silence. Then you left us on Thanksgiving to be with them. I left because I couldn't sit at that table with Dad and pretend everything was okay when it's not. Jamie, you can't just run away when things get difficult. I'm not running away. I'm choosing where I want to be with people who actually act like a family. That's not fair, isn't it, Mom? They welcome me into their home with no questions. They treat Ethan like he matters. They don't make him hide who he is or who he loves. That's what family should look like. We're still your family, Mom said, her voice breaking. Then act like it. Call Ethan. Tell him you love him. Stop letting Dad dictate how you feel about your own son. It's not that simple. It is exactly that simple. You either love him as he is or you don't. There's no middle ground here. I need more time. How much time, Mom? Because Ethan's not frozen in place waiting for you to be ready. He's living his life. He's happy. And every day you wait is another day you miss being part of that. I hung up before she could respond, my hands shaking. Confrontation didn't come naturally to me, but I was learning. Ethan found me in the guest room staring at my phone. Heard you on the phone, he said, sitting next to me. That was intense. I'm tired of being diplomatic, tired of protecting their feelings when they won't protect yours. I appreciate you fighting for me, Jamie, but you can't make them change. They have to want to. Do they want to change? Ethan was quiet for a long moment. I don't know, maybe Mom does. Dad, I'm less sure about. And if they don't, if this is permanent, then we have this. He gestured around Maka's family home. We have people who choose us, who see us as we are and love us anyway. That's not nothing. It's not enough though. Not for you, no, Ethan admitted. It's not, but it's what I have, so I'm making it enough. The resignation in his voice broke my heart. My brother, who'd always been so strong, so certain, was learning to settle for scraps of acceptance from the people who should have loved him unconditionally. I promised myself in that moment that I'd do better, whether it was with David or someone else in the future, whether I ended up identifying as gay or bi or something else entirely. I would never make someone I loved feel like they had to earn my acceptance. Love should be the starting point, not the destination. December brought finals in cold weather and a decision I'd been avoiding. David and I had been dating for 6 weeks. We'd gone on countless coffee dates, studied together at the library, kissed in his car when no one was watching. He'd met Ethan and Marcus, had instantly bonded with them over their shared love of architecture and classic literature. But he hadn't met my parents, and that was becoming a problem. "It's okay if you're not ready," David said. One afternoon, we were in his dorm room supposedly studying for our English final, but mostly just talking. "I know your situation is complicated. It's not fair to you, though, to have to hide." "I'm not hiding, you're protecting yourself. There's a difference, is there, because it feels a lot like what Ethan went through. The secret meetings, the careful stories, the constant fear of being discovered." David sat down his textbook and turned to face me fully. "Jame, we've been together for 6 weeks. 6 weeks, it's okay that you haven't told your parents yet. Most people don't introduce every person they date to their parents right away. But you're not just every person." His expression softened. "No, no, yours, you're important. You make me happy in a way I didn't know I could be happy. And I hate that I can't share that with them, so tell them when you're ready. Not because I'm pressuring you, but because you want to." I wanted to, God, I wanted to. I wanted to tell my mom about David's terrible jokes and his passion for teaching. I wanted my dad to see how kind he was, how he pushed me to be better. I wanted to bring him to family dinners and have him be part of my life in every way, but I was terrified. The decision was made for me, as these things often are, in the most unexpected way. It was a Tuesday afternoon, 2 weeks before Christmas. I'd stopped by the house to pick up some winter clothes I'd left behind. I've been spending more time at my dorm lately, avoiding the tension at home. Mom was out grocery shopping. Dad was supposed to be at work, but when I walked into the house, I found him in the living room. And he wasn't alone. Pastor Michael from our church sat on the couch, a stack of pamphlets on the coffee table in front of him. Pamphlets with titles like Understanding Same-Sex Attraction and Healing Through Faith in God's Plan for Sexuality. My stomach dropped. "Jamie," Dad said, standing. "Good you're here. Pastor Michael and I were just discussing some resources that might be helpful for you and your brother." "Resources for what?" "For addressing these tendencies before they become permanent lifestyle choices." I stared at the pamphlets, at the smiling, wholesome faces on the covers, at the promises of restoration and redemption. "Conversion therapy?" They were talking about conversion therapy. "No," I said simply, "Jamie, we just want to help." My voice was rising. "You think trying to change who someone is helping? We believe that with proper guidance and faith, these inclinations can be overcome," Pastor Michael said in that smooth, reasonable voice that made my skin crawl. "They're not inclinations. Ethan is gay. That's not something he chose, and it's not something that needs to be fixed. The Bible is very clear on this matter." "I don't care." The words came out harder than I intended. "I don't care what your interpretation of the Bible says. Ethan is happy, he's in love. If he's living authentically, that's all that should matter." "James, sit down," Dad said. "Let's talk about this rationally." "There's nothing rational about what you're suggesting. You want to send him to therapy to make him straight. Do you have any idea how harmful that is? How many people have been traumatized by that? The Lord can work miracles." "Stop," I was shouting now, all my pent-up frustration exploding out. "Just stop with the religious justifications for bigotry. You don't get to hide behind God to excuse treating your son like he's broken." "I won't have you speak to me this way," Dad said, his face re-enning. "Then maybe you should listen when I speak to you with respect." "But you don't, you never have. You made up your mind about Ethan the moment you found out. And nothing anyone says will change it, because I know what's right. You know what you've been taught. That's not the same thing." I grabbed my jacket, forgetting about the winter clothes I'd come for. "I'm leaving, and I'm going to tell Ethan about this, so don't even think about approaching him with this garbage." "Jamie, wait." I didn't wait. I walked out of that house and didn't look back. In my car, my hands shook so badly I had to sit for 5 minutes before I could safely drive. Conversion therapy. They were actually considering conversion therapy. The thought made me nauseous. I called Ethan, told him everything. His silence on the other end was worse than if he'd been angry. "Ethan, you still there?" "Yeah, I'm here." His voice sounded hollow. I guess I shouldn't be surprised. Part of me always knew it might come to this. "You're not going to talk to them, right? You're not going to let them convince you." "Jamie, I'm not 17. They can't force me into therapy. And even if they could, I wouldn't go. I know who I am. Good, because that stuff is dangerous. People have died. I know. Believe me, I know." He took a shaky breath. "Thanks for telling me, and thanks for standing up to them. I'm sorry it wasn't enough. Sorry they're like this. Not your fault, little brother, not your fault at all." After we hung up, I drove to David's dorm. I needed to see him. Needed the reminder that love didn't have to be this hard, this painful. He took one look at my face and pulled me inside, no questions asked. We lay on his narrow dorm bed, his arms around me, and I told him everything. "I'm scared," I admitted. "I'm scared they'll try the same thing with me if they find out about us. I'm scared of becoming Ethan, of being rejected and dismissed and treated like I'm sick." "Then we'll deal with it together," David said quietly. "But Jame, you can't live in fear of their reactions forever. At some point you have to choose your own happiness over their comfort." "Is it selfish to choose myself?" "It's survival, and there's nothing selfish about that." We stayed like that for hours, wrapped up in each other. The outside world temporarily held at bay, but I knew I couldn't hide forever. The question was, how long until I was ready to stop? Christmas approached with all the weight of unmet expectations. Mom called me every few days asking if I'd be home for the holidays. I kept making vague promises, buying time while I figured out what I wanted to do. Ethan and Marcus were spending Christmas with Marcus's family again. They'd invited me, but something in me resisted. Running away to Marcus' family's house felt like admitting defeat, like acknowledging that my own family was truly broken beyond repair. You can't fix them, David said when I expressed this frustration. We were at a diner near campus sharing fries and milkshakes like we were living in a 1950s romance. They have to want to be fixed. I know, but what if I'm the catalyst? What if me being there trying one more time is what finally breaks through? And what if it's not? What if you go there and it's just more of the same? More rejection, more judgment. At least I'll know I tried everything. David reached across the table and took my hand. We were in public and the gesture still sent a small thrill of fear through me. That instinctive checking to see if anyone noticed, if anyone cared. I support whatever you decide, he said, but I'm also going to say this. You don't owe them your presence, especially not if it costs you your peace. He was right. But knowing something intellectually and feeling it emotionally are two different things. The decision ultimately came from an unexpected source, my mother. She showed up at my dorm 3 days before Christmas looking smaller, somehow more fragile than I remembered. I was studying for a last-minute makeup exam when there was a knock on my door. Mom, what are you doing here? Can I come in? I let her in, suddenly aware of how messy my room was. Clothes on the floor, textbooks everywhere, a half-eaten pizza on my desk. I'm sorry to just show up, she said, perching on the edge of my desk chair, but you haven't been returning my calls and I needed to see you. I've been busy with finals. Don't lie to me, Jamie, you're avoiding us, avoiding home. There was no point in denying it. Yes, I am, because of what your father did, the conversation therapy pamphlets, so she knew that's part of it. He shouldn't have done that. I told him it was too much too fast, but he's scared, Jame. We both are scared of what? That you have a gay son, that your kids aren't who you expected them to be, scared that we're losing you both. Her voice cracked. First Ethan leaves and now you're barely speaking to us. We're watching our family fall apart. You're the ones tearing it apart. The words burst out of me. Ethan didn't leave. You kicked him out. I'm not avoiding you because I want to. I'm avoiding you because being around you means watching you pretend your son doesn't exist. Do you have any idea how painful that is to love both of you and watch this happen? I don't know what you want from us. I want you to love your son. I want you to call him, tell him you're sorry, to make an effort. Is that really so much to ask? Mom was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. I'm afraid of what? Of losing everything I thought I knew. My faith tells me one thing, but my heart tells me another. I love Ethan. I've loved him since the moment he was born. But accepting this means questioning everything I was raised to believe. It means potentially being judged by our church, our friends, our community. And that matters more than your son. No, God, no, but I don't know how to navigate this. Jamie, I don't know how to be the mother he needs while staying true to who I am. I sat down on my bed, exhausted by the circular nature of this conversation. Mom, who you are can change. People grow, evolve, learn new things. You don't have to be the same person you were 20 years ago. Your father won't change, then that's his choice, but it doesn't have to be yours. She looked up at me, hope and fear warring in her expression. What if I choose wrong? What if I choose Ethan and it costs me everything else? What if you don't choose him and it costs you him? Is everything else worth that? The question hung in the air between us. After a long moment, Mom stood up. I need to think. Really think, not just react. She paused at the door. Will you come home for Christmas, please? Even if it's hard, even if it's uncomfortable, we're still a family, Jame. That has to count for something. I thought about Ethan spending another holiday away from home. About Marcus's family welcoming us with open arms while our own family fractured. About David, who I'd been planning to spend Christmas with, who represented a future I was still too scared to claim fully. I'll come, I said finally. But I'm bringing someone, a friend from school, my boyfriend. The word felt revolutionary, terrifying, liberating all at once. Mom's eyes widened. I'm figuring it out, but yes, I'm dating someone. His name is David, and if I'm coming home for Christmas, he's coming with me. I expected her to argue, to protest, to shut down. Instead, she just nodded slowly. Okay, bring him, I'd like to meet him. She left before I could respond, leaving me sitting in my messy dorm room, wondering what I just set in motion. Are you sure about this? David asked when I told him. We were in his car, parked outside my dorm, heat blasting against the December cold. No, but I'm doing it anyway. Your dad's going to lose his mind, probably, but my mom said to bring you. That has to count for something. David took my hand, threading our fingers together. Jamie, I'm honored you want me there, but I need you to know if it gets bad, if they make you uncomfortable, or if you need to leave, we leave. No questions asked, deal, deal. We kissed, and in that moment I felt brave, terrified but brave. Christmas Eve arrived too quickly. David picked me up in his car. His parents had let him borrow it for the holiday. I'd packed light, preparing for the possibility that we might need to leave suddenly. Ready? He asked as we pulled up to my childhood home. Not even a little bit, he squeezed my hand. You've got this. We walked to the door together. I could see lights through the window, could hear music playing inside. For a moment, it looked like a scene from a Christmas card. Perfect, peaceful, normal. I rang the doorbell. Mom answered and her eyes immediately went to our joined hands. Something flickered across her face. Surprise, acceptance, resignation before she smiled. Jame, welcome home. She looked at David. You must be David. Come in, both of you. The house smelled like pine and cinnamon, exactly how I remembered Christmas smelling as a kid. Dad was in the living room setting up last-minute decorations. He turned when we entered and I watched his face go through a series of expressions as he took in David, our proximity, the obvious nature of our relationship. Dad, this is David, my boyfriend. David, my father. Silence was deafening. Your boyfriend, Dad repeated flatly. Yes, I see. He set down the decoration and crossed his arms. So both my sons are. He couldn't finish the sentence. Human, happy, in love, I supplied. Yes, we both are. This is unacceptable, Michael. Mom's voice cut through his growing anger. We agreed. They're here for Christmas. We're going to be civil. We agreed to have Jame home, not to host this display. This display is your son and his boyfriend and they're staying. I stared at my mother. She was standing straighter than I'd seen her in months. Her voice firm. This was what standing up looked like. What choosing your child looked like. Dad stared at her too. Alina, no, I'm done, Michael. I'm done letting you dictate how this family operates. I'm done pretending I don't have a son because you can't accept who he is. And I'm done watching James suffer because we've created a home where he doesn't feel safe being himself. You're making a mistake. The only mistake I made was waiting this long. Mom turned to me and David. I've made up the guest room for you both. There's 2 twin beds. I hope that's okay. Mom, my voice caught. Thank you. She hugged me tightly. I'm sorry it took me so long. I'm sorry for a lot of things. Dad walked out without another word. We heard his office door slam shut. Give him time, Mom said, though she didn't sound convinced. That night David and I lay in the twin beds in the guest room talking in whispers. Your mom's pretty great, he said. She's trying. That's more than I expected. What about your dad? I don't know, he might never come around, and if he doesn't, I thought about Ethan, about the choice he'd made to live authentically even when it cost him everything. About Marcus' parents who'd chosen their son over their expectations. About David lying across the room from me who'd stood beside me through one of the hardest nights of my life. Then I have you and Mom and Ethan and Marcus. And that's enough, is it though? It has to be. Christmas morning was awkward but not hostile. Dad stayed mostly in his office, appearing only for meals and then disappearing again. But Mom made an effort asking David about his family, his studies, his plans for the future. She set extra places at the table. She wrapped presents for both of us. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. The week between Christmas and New Year's was strange, existing in that liminal space where time feels suspended. David had gone home to see his own family, promising to be back for New Year's Eve. I stayed at my parents' house, navigating the careful détente that had formed. Mom and I talked more in those few days than we had in months. She told me about her own doubts, the sleepless nights, the slowly forming realization that her love for her sons had to be bigger than her fear of judgment. Your father is struggling, she said. One afternoon, we were in the kitchen making cookies like we used to when I was a kid. This challenges everything he believes. Maybe everything he believes needs challenging perhaps, but you can't force someone to change James, they have to arrive at it themselves. Has he said anything about Ethan, about me and David? Not much, but he hasn't left either. He's still here, still trying to process that something. It wasn't enough, but I understood what she meant. Some people needed time, the question was whether we could wait for them. On December 28th, something shifted. I was in my old bedroom when I heard voices downstairs. Mom's and someone else's, someone familiar. I rushed down to find Ethan standing in the hallway, Mom crying and hugging him. Ethan, I stopped on the stairs, unable to believe what I was seeing. He looked up, grinning, surprised. What are you doing here? Mom called, said it was time I came home. Mom pulled back, wiping her eyes. I've wasted too much time already. I wanted my son here for the holidays, both my sons. Where's Marcus? I asked. Parking the car, I told him he should wait, but Mom insisted. Of course I insisted. He's part of your life, that makes him part of this family. The front door opened and Marcus stepped inside looking nervous. I hope it's okay that Mom hugged him too, catching him off guard. It's more than okay. Welcome home, Marcus. I watched this scene unfold, this impossible reunion, and felt tears prick my eyes. This was what forgiveness looked like, what love looked like when it chose to grow instead of shrink. Where's Dad? Ethan asked quietly, as if summoned. Dad appeared in the doorway to the living room. He and Ethan stared at each other across the distance of the hallway, months of hurt and anger and love hanging between them. Ethan, Dad said finally. Dad. The silence stretched. I held my breath. Your mother tells me you're happy, Dad said. His voice was careful, controlled, that this Marcus treats you well. Does he? Makes me very happy. Dad nodded slowly. That's good. A father wants his son to be happy even if the son is gay. Another pause. I'm not going to pretend I understand this. I don't. Everything in my faith, my upbringing tells me this is wrong. But he looked at Mom, who was watching him intently. But my wife made me realize something. She asked me what I feared more, God's judgment or losing my son, and I couldn't answer her. Dad, let me finish. Dad held up a hand. I've spent 2 months being angry, feeling betrayed, confused, disappointed. But underneath all that was fear. Fear that I'd failed as a father, fear of what people would think, fear of the unknown. He took a breath. But you know what? I'm more afraid of dying without knowing my son. Missing grandchildren I might have, choosing pride over love. Ethan's eyes were streaming now. So what are you saying? I'm saying I don't understand this. I may never fully understand it. My beliefs haven't changed overnight. Dad's voice roughened. But you're my son and that matters more than anything else. So if this is who you are, if this is your life, then I want to be part of it if you'll let me. Ethan crossed the hallway and hugged Dad, both of them crying. Marcus stood back, giving them space, but I could see the relief in his face. This was it, the moment we'd been waiting for. Not perfect acceptance, not immediate transformation, but the willingness to try. The choice to love despite discomfort, to grow despite fear. That night all 5 of us, Mom, Dad, Ethan, Marcus, and me, sat around the dining table like we hadn't in months. The conversation was sometimes stilted, sometimes awkward, but it was happening. Dad asked Marcus about his architecture work. Mom fussed over Ethan, making sure he was eating enough vegetables. I told stories about my classes, about David testing the waters. This boyfriend of yours, Dad said eventually. David, he's good to you, very good, and you're sure about this about him. I'm figuring it out, Dad, but yeah, I'm sure about him. Dad nodded, not quite smiling but not frowning either. Neutral territory, but it was something. Later, Ethan and I found ourselves alone on the back porch, the same porch where everything had begun last summer. I can't believe they actually came around, I said. Mom came around. Dad's trying. That's enough for now. Is it really enough? Ethan was quiet for a moment. You know what I've learned through all this? Perfect doesn't exist. Perfect families, perfect acceptance, perfect love, it's all a myth. What exists is people trying their best, making mistakes, growing. Learning, that's what real love looks like. When did you get so wise? When I had two, he bumped my shoulder. But seriously, Jamie, this isn't a fairy tale ending. There will be more hard conversations, more awkward moments, times when dad says the wrong thing or mom asks uncomfortable questions, but they're trying. That's more than a lot of people get. I know, I just wish it had been easier for you. You shouldn't have had to lose months with them. No, I shouldn't have. But maybe I needed that time too, to learn who I was without their approval to build a life that was mine. The pain was worth the growth. I thought about my own journey over the past few months. The fear, the confusion, the gradual understanding of who I might be, the courage it took to bring David home to claim that space for myself. Thank you, I said, for going first, for being brave enough to show me it was possible. Always, little brother, always. New Year's Eve brought David back, and for the first time we had an actual real family celebration. Marcus' parents even came over, having become friends with my mom during their various phone conversations about the boys. It was chaotic and loud and occasionally awkward, but it was real. Dad and Marcus's dad, Robert, found common ground, discussing architecture and construction. Mom and Alina traded recipes and stories. Ethan and Marcus fit into the space like they'd always belonged there. David charmed everyone with his terrible jokes and genuine kindness. At midnight, as everyone counted down, I looked around at the strange patched-together family we'd built from the wreckage of expectations and disappointment. It wasn't what any of us had planned, but it was ours. "Happy New Year," David whispered, kissing me as the clock struck 12. Around us, people cheered, but I was focused on him, on this moment, on the future spreading out before us. "Happy New Year," I whispered back. Spring semester brought new challenges and old comforts. I'd officially declared myself as bisexual, a label that felt right even if it took me months to claim it. David and I were still together, still learning each other, still building something that felt important. Ethan and Marcus got engaged in March, a quiet proposal in the park where they'd first brought me into their secret. Mom cried happy tears. Dad shook Marcus' hand and said, "Welcome to the family," like he meant it. The wedding was planned for the following summer, a small ceremony in Marcus' parents' backyard, intimate and perfect. My parents attended their first P-flag meeting in April. Dad sat in the back, arms crossed, but he sat there. He listened to other parents talk about their journeys, their struggles, their eventual acceptance. He didn't say much, but afterward he bought a book about understanding LGBTQ+ identities. I found it on his nightstand a week later, dogered and heavily underlined. "He's reading it," Mom told me when I asked. Every night before bed, sometimes he reads passages out loud to me, testing the ideas, trying to reconcile them with everything he thought he knew. "Is it helping?" "Slowly. Your father is like a cargo ship. It takes him a long time to change course, but he's turning, James. Little by little, he's turning." In May, something happened that I didn't expect. Dad asked if he could take Ethan and Marcus out to lunch, just the three of them. "Should I be worried?" Marcus asked me the night before, his nervousness evident. "I don't think so, but I honestly don't know what to expect." They met at a small Italian restaurant downtown, neutral territory. Ethan told me later that the first 20 minutes were excruciatingly awkward. Dad asking formal questions about Marcus' thesis defense, Marcus giving careful answers, both of them dancing around anything real. Then Dad set down his menu and said, "I owe you both an apology." The restaurant noise continued around them, but their table went silent. "I was wrong," Dad continued, "about so many things. I let my fear and my pride blind me to what was right in front of me. Two people who genuinely love each other. I've spent the last few months learning, reading, talking to other parents, and I've realized that my understanding of faith was narrow and fearful." "Mr. Atrix," Marcus started, "please call me Michael or Dad if you're comfortable with that. You're going to be family soon." Marcus's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you. That means more than you know." Dad turned to Ethan. "I've missed so much months of your life and I can't get that time back, but I'd like to be present for the rest of it if you'll have me." "Horse, Dad." Ethan's voice was thick with emotion. "Of course." They spent the next 2 hours talking, really talking for the first time. Dad asked about the proposal, about wedding plans, about their apartment. He told stories about Ethan as a kid, making Marcus laugh. He asked thoughtful questions about Marcus's family, his heritage, his dreams. When Ethan called me that night, he could barely speak through his joy. "He's trying, Jamie, he's really trying." He asked if he could walk me down the aisle at the wedding. Said it would be the honor of his life. "That's amazing, Ethan. I never thought I'd have this. A real relationship with Dad, a family that accepts us. It feels like a dream. You deserve it. You deserve all of it." After we hung up, I sat with David on his dorm room bed, processing the day. "Your family's come a long way," David observed. "They have. It's not perfect. Dad still says things sometimes that make everyone uncomfortable. Mom still gets nervous when people ask about her sons, but they're trying. That's what matters. My parents want to meet yours," David said casually. "At the wedding, they think it's time our families met officially." The thought sent a thrill through me. Our families meeting meant this was real, lasting, serious. It meant David and I weren't just dating. We were building something permanent. "I'd like that," I said. "I think they'd like each other." David pulled me closer. "I love you." "You know, I don't think I've said that clearly enough." My heart stuttered. We'd been together for 6 months, but this was the first time either of us had said those words. I love you too, I whispered so much it scares me sometimes. Good scared or bad scared? Good scared, the kind that means something matters. We kissed, and in that kiss was the promise of everything we might become. To each other, to our families, to ourselves. June arrived with heat and humidity and the controlled chaos of wedding preparations. Ethan and Marcus had kept things simple. 50 guests, a backyard ceremony, a reception under string lights and paper lanterns, but simple didn't mean stress-free. I can't find my tie, Ethan said on the morning of the wedding, tearing through his and Marcus' room at Marcus's parents' house. I had it right here and now it's gone. It's hanging in the closet, I said calmly. Where you put it last night, while repeatedly saying, I'll remember where this is, I'll definitely remember. He stopped, sheepish. Right, thank you. I straightened his collar, nervous, terrified, excited, all of it. He met my eyes. Is it supposed to feel like your heart might explode? I think that's probably a good sign. Downstairs, the house was a flurry of activity. Elena was directing caterers with military precision. Robert was setting up chairs in the backyard. Sophia was arranging flowers, arguing with Marcus about whether the centerpieces needed more greenery. And in the corner, I found my parents. Mom was crying, of course, happy tears this time. Dad stood beside her, looking uncomfortable in his suit but present, engaged. When he saw me, he motioned me over. Your brother looks happy, he said. He is happier than I've ever seen him. I'm glad. Dad paused, choosing his words carefully. I was wrong about many things, James, but I was most wrong about thinking that love could only look one way. What your brother and Marcus have, that's real love. Patient, kind, selfless. That's what the Bible actually teaches, if I'd been paying attention. It was the most profound thing I'd ever heard my father say. Dad, I know I can't undo the pain I caused, can't give back the time we lost, but I want you both to know I'm proud of you, of the men you've become, of your courage to be yourselves despite everything. I hugged him, this man who'd taken so long to arrive at acceptance but had finally miraculously gotten there. Thank you, Dad, that means everything. The ceremony was beautiful in its simplicity. White chairs arranged in neat rows, and arch decorated with flowers, golden afternoon light filtering through the trees. David sat with my parents in the front row, already part of the family. When the music started, Marcus walked down the aisle first, looking sharp in a navy suit, his smile so wide it could have lit up the night. Then came Ethan, walking arm in arm with Dad, both of them crying. I stood up front as Ethan's best man. Watching this moment I'd never been sure would happen. My brother marrying the man he loved, our parents sitting proudly in the front row, our found family surrounding us with support and celebration. The officiant, a friend of Marcus' family, spoke about love in all its forms, about the courage it takes to live authentically, about family being both blood and choice. When it came time for vows, Ethan went first. Marcus, he began, his voice steady despite the tears streaming down his face. A year ago I was living two lives. The one everyone saw and the real one I shared only with you. You taught me that I didn't have to split myself in half to be loved. That the real me and all my complexity and contradiction and truth was enough. You've been my safe harbor, my best friend, my home. Today, in front of everyone we love, I get to finally fully claim you as mine. And that's the greatest gift I could ask for. Marcus was openly crying now. When it was his turn, he had to take a moment to compose himself. Ethan, you once told me that loving me was the scariest, bravest thing you'd ever done. But from where I stand, you're the brave one. You chose authenticity over comfort, truth over ease. You built a bridge between two worlds and invited everyone to cross it with you. Some did, some didn't, that you never stopped being yourself. That's the man I fell in love with, someone who knows who he is and stands firm in that knowledge. I promise to always be your safe space, your loudest cheerleader and your partner in all things. I love you and I can't wait to spend the rest of my life showing you how much. There was a dry eye in the gathering. When they exchanged rings and the officiant pronounced them married, the cheer that went up could probably be heard 3 blocks away. They kissed long and sweet and joyful and then turned to face their people as a married couple. The reception was exactly what they'd wanted, casual, warm, full of laughter. Dad gave a toast that made everyone cry, talking about learning to see love with new eyes. Mom slow danced with Ethan, whispering things to him that made him hold her tighter. Marcus' parents welcomed Ethan officially into the Santos family with a traditional Filipino blessing. And David and I danced under the string lights, swaying to some old love song wrapped up in our own bubble of happiness. Think that'll be us someday? He asked, nodding toward Ethan and Marcus, who were kissing for the 1000th time that night. Maybe, if you can put up with me that long, I think I can manage. We kissed, and around us life continued. Messy, complicated, beautiful life. The kind of life that comes from choosing love over fear, from building bridges instead of walls, from showing up even when it's hard. 2 years later I stood in almost the same spot where Ethan's wedding had taken place, preparing for my own commitment ceremony with David. We decided against a traditional wedding, opting instead for a celebration of partnership that felt more authentically us. Ethan was my best man, of course. He helped me with my tie, a deep blue that matched David's, and grinned at my nervousness. Remember when I was the one freaking out? He said, you were surprisingly calm, actually. That's because I had you there. Now I'm returning the favor. So much had changed in 2 years. Ethan and Marcus had bought a small house near the university. Marcus was teaching now, shaping young architects' minds. Ethan had been promoted to assistant manager at the bookstore and was considering going back to school for his MERS in literature. I'd graduated with honors, gotten accepted to a graduate program in psychology. David was student teaching at a local high school, discovering that yes, teaching was definitely his calling, even when students tried to argue that Shakespeare wasn't relevant to modern life. And my parents had continued their journey. Dad volunteered now with PFL-AAG, sharing his story with other struggling parents. Mom had become friends with half the LGBTQ plus community in our town, hosting dinners and get-togethers with a frequency that sometimes overwhelmed even her. They were in the front row again today, beaming with pride. "I never thought I'd have this," I said to Ethan. "Everything you went through, the pain, the rejection, I was so scared it would happen to me too. But it didn't because I went first, because Mom and Dad learned, because you were brave enough to be honest anyway. You made it possible. We made it possible together." He adjusted my collar one last time. "That's what family does. We make the path easier for the next person. We break down walls so others don't have to." The music started our cue. "Ready?" Ethan asked, more than ready. David was waiting for me at the arch, looking handsome and nervous and perfect. When our eyes met, everything else faded away. This moment, this person, this life we were building together, it was everything. Our ceremony was brief but meaningful. We spoke about partnership, about choosing each other daily, about building a life based on mutual respect and endless communication, and above all, love. When it came time for our own vows, David went first. "Jamie, 2 years ago you walked into my life and showed me what courage looks like. Not the loud, dramatic kind, the quiet, persistent kind. The kind that shows up every day and chooses love even when it's hard. You've taught me that family isn't just about blood. It's about showing up, about accepting people as they are, about growing together. I promise to always be your partner, your safe space, and your biggest fan. I love you and I choose you today and always." My turn. I'd rehearsed these words 100 times, but standing here looking at David, they came from somewhere deeper than memory. "David, you taught me that I was allowed to take up space, that my love, my identity, my truth, they all mattered. You waited while I figured myself out, supported me through the hard conversations, celebrated every small victory. With you I learned that love doesn't have to be complicated or painful. It can be simple and joyful and easy. You make me laugh every day. You challenge me to be better. You see me, really see me, and love what you see. I promise to spend my life returning that gift. I love you and I can't wait for everything that comes next." We exchanged rings, simple bands that matched but weren't identical, just like us. The officiant pronounced us partners for life, and David kissed me as our families cheered. Later, during the reception, I found myself sitting with Ethan on the porch steps, watching everyone dance and celebrate inside. "Thank you," I said, "for everything, for being brave first, for showing me it was possible. You would have found your way without me. Maybe, but it would have been a lot harder, a lot lonelier." Ethan put his arm around me. "You know what I think about sometimes? That night when I first told you, when I said just keep it between us and you promised you would, that was the beginning of everything, the hard parts and the beautiful parts and everything in between. Do you regret it? Any of it? Not for a second. The pain was worth it, all of it, because it led to this, to real family, real love, real life." I looked through the window at David dancing with my mom. Both of them laughing, at Marcus teaching my dad some complicated dance move, at our friends and family all mixed together celebrating love in Al.